Uh, we're going to turn our attention to the National Football League. And if you'll allow me to rant for just a second,
Please do.
I'm about as angry as I've ever been as a Philadelphia Eagles fan. Chicana,
Wow.
I'm as frustrated as I've ever been. It just seems like a team that is completely directionless, that is losing its locker room, that doesn't have the wherewithal to understand the situation and correct it. It's just a broken team. We have the rumors that Alshon Jeffery is the quote unquote anonymous source in the locker room, bad mouthing both Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz. It kind of makes sense considering the timing of all of this and that there were some of these grumblings last year. Zach Brown gets cut for, not doing what the coaches want him to do on defense. They draft Sidney Jones in the second round a couple of years ago. He's a healthy scratch behind guys like Rasul Douglas, Orlando Scandrick, who was cut the next day, and Craig James signed off the street as a free agent. This is our second round pick. The linebacker core right now it's captained by Camus Grugier Hill, along with Nathan Gary and guy TJ Edwards. Undrafted free agent starting game 7. Exciting times in Philadelphia. Nelson Aguilar. Nelson Aguilar may be my least favorite Eagle of all time. And I think this is true. There have been a lot of guys on this roster who I have just utterly despised. Nelson Aguilar, his lack of effort, his lack of production, it's mind-boggling. We all saw the video of him effectively giving up on a ball that wasn't super far outside of his reach during the Eagles game this weekend. He has the lowest percentage of he has caught the lowest percentage of balls. I don't have the stat in front of me, so caught the lowest percentage of balls of any wide receiver in the NFL of catchable deep balls this season. Catching only 20% of the catchable deep balls.
Ugh.
And let me give you some numbers over the last 4 games here for how productive this wide receiver unit has been. It's crazy that they're just doing absolutely nothing. Alshon Jeffery has played 230 snaps. He's caught 21 passes for 204 yards. Fine, whatever. It's bad, but we're going to get way worse than that. Nelson Aguilar, 230 snaps, 7 catches, 86 yards, no touchdowns. He did fumble, though. Mac Hollins has played 139 snaps. He has caught 1 ball for 13 yards and has not scored. JJ Arcega-Whiteside has played 25 snaps, 0 catches, 0 yards, 0 touchdowns. That's, doing the quick math here, that's 164 plus 460, 624. I could be wrong there, but I think that number's correct. 624 snaps for 29 catches and about 300 yards. That is the Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver core. And we're seeing more that the team is turning to Dallas Goedert. And, they've always used Zach Ertz, although he has seen his production dip. And Miles Sanders is being used out of the backfield in a very Duke Johnson-y role. I'm convinced that he's Duke Johnson all over again, and it terrifies me, by the way. For the Eagles, there's just no confidence. And add to that the offensive line, which looked like a strong suit coming into the year, who, by the way, are all graded out pretty well on PFF, take that for what it's worth, are giving up pressures on over half of Carson Wentz's dropbacks last week. Over half. National average.
Not a great front either for Dallas.
No, not a great front. And they weren't blitzing. They were getting pressure from the front 4 solely. Obviously, there was a couple of blitzes, but predominantly the front 4. And oh my God, it's the national average is a quarterback's going to face pressure on 26% of his dropbacks. At one point in that game, Carson Wentz was at 58% of his dropbacks. How an offense runs when you're getting pressure on over half of the guys' passing attempts blows my mind. This team is fractured on the inside. I mentioned the Alshon Jeffery stuff, but there's also Lane Johnson, who I tend to believe is telling the truth, came out and said that, basically guys have to be held more accountable this week, and that's what's going to happen Guys are late for meetings, guys are late for practice, and then all of that stuff was kind of refuted by Malcolm Jenkins, who, rightfully doesn't want stuff, dirty laundry aired in public, and that's fine. But I understand where Johnson's coming from, because at some point you do have to hold people accountable and let the public know what's going on. And that is the case here. This team is not showing up. They don't care. They have the worst talent, 25 and under in the NFL right now. They're aging. They're facing some cap issues moving forward. And they're just not getting production from the players who they're paying. They're so broken. And then I look at a team like the Patriots. The Patriots shut out a division rival who beat the Cowboys last week. They dominate a good young quarterback. And when I wake up this morning, they've gone out and got another piece on offense, acquiring Mohamed Sanu for a second-round pick. That is how organizations have run. Now, maybe they overpaid for Sanu a tiny bit. I think that's probably the case. But they're trying something. They're not resting on their laurels. And their laurels are a 33-point win.
Right. Their laurels are undefeated so far. First of all, amazing monologue rant. That was incredible. Second of all, throughout that, I'm not sure if you mentioned Deshaun Jackson, but not having him, they put up the money to get him for a reason, and not having him as that deep ball receiver has clearly been a major issue for them. I mean, they were planning around him, which, you can question the validity of doing something like that, because he is hurt so often. He is old, but that, I think that was the plan. And, not having him has proven to be a major issue for them. I always defer to Doug Peterson when I think of this team, but maybe we shouldn't always defer to him. Maybe there are things that, there are issues, and, you could also, I think that there's the chance that they could have a worse record than they do right now. They're only a game back. They're right there. No one's running and hiding. Dallas, yes, they played them really well, but they're expected to win that game in Dallas last week. I understand your frustration, about that, about losing to a rival, especially in that way. But another tough one this week at Buffalo. After that, I think the schedule opens up a little bit for them. And
isn't it Bears Patriots at that point?
It's Bears. Yeah, the Bears at home. I'm not worried. The Bears aren't that good, and they're playing in Philly. I think they'll be okay. Then they have the bye. They have 2 weeks to get ready for New England at home, and then Seattle at home. 3 straight home games, and then Miami, the Giants, the Skins. I think there's a good chance they emerge from that 4-1, and so or 5-1, I should say. And so, look, it's not great right now, but I trust. And you said the talent under 25, yeah, maybe it's not that great, but the talent generally on the roster is very good, and I just buy into their talent top to bottom. I do expect them to get better, but something's got to change, and it can't just be Deshaun Jackson hopefully coming back. It's got to be more. Maybe it's more Miles Sanders. I don't know, but I think that there's got to be something there for them for sure.
Well, the Broncos
and the secondary, man. The
secondary. The Broncos have just traded Emmanuel Sanders and a 2020 fifth-round pick to the San Francisco 49ers for a 2020 third and 2020 fourth-round pick.
Yeah,
and one more target off the board.
You were just saying about New England that they paid up. A second rounder for Sanu seems silly to me. That seems much more like the right kind of deal, that Manny Sanders deal. So, one less target off the board. But I don't even know that that'd be what I'm targeting for you guys. I would be throwing resources, whatever it takes to get Patrick Peterson. I fully believe that that's the guy they should be targeting.
Well, rumors are that the Eagles offered a first and second round pick for Jalen Ramsey. They were obviously outbid by the Rams, and then offered a first round pick in Nelson Aguilar. Oh God, negative value to the Cardinals for Patrick Peterson. I got a lot of texts yesterday because obviously Gary and Conley was traded from the Raiders and for a third round pick, and it's like, why don't we go after this guy? Well, Gary and Conley hasn't been good, and he's a thug. That one doesn't bother me. But,
I think you're okay on that.
Yeah, that's not the kind of culture I want to bring into a broken locker room. But when you're talking about guys like William Jackson in Cincinnati, like Chris Harris in Denver, Patrick Peterson in Arizona, there's plenty of targets to try and figure this secondary out. My fear is that they genuinely think that the returns of Ronald Darby, Cravon LeBlanc, and Avonte Maddox are going to magically fix the secondary. They're not. Jalen Mills came back last week, played well, but he's Jalen Mills. He's a third cornerback in the NFL, and he's forced into a number one role right now. Everyone else was utterly exploited, and it was sickening. And what else was sickening to me is that I woke up on Monday morning, and Nelson Aguilar was a Philadelphia Eagle, and Mike Groh was the offensive coordinator, and Corey Olden was the defensive backs coach, and Carson Walsh was the wide receivers coach. Changes need to be made. Heads need to be rolled. No, heads need to be rolled. Heads need to roll. There needs to be accountability. And if you just let the status quo continue, you're going to continue to get status quo. Mike Groh is a guy who was fired by his father. Mike Groh is a guy who was who was the architect of that St. Louis Rams offense. Were they still in St. Louis? The last Jeff Fisher year. I don't know if it was St. Louis or LA, whatever. But the Los Angeles Rams offense that finished 31 of 32 teams in terms of passing and got Jeff Fisher fired. And made for an interesting year of all or nothing, but not for a good football team. And somehow he keeps falling upwards and is given opportunities. This team showed absolutely nothing last year. And then they're like, well, let's try it again. And what boggles my mind is that this is a team that, and rightfully so, because I believe strongly in this, and obviously if I believe it, it must be correct, but they highly emphasized quality coaches in this coaching staff. When they had the DiFilippos and the Frank Reichs and all of those guys, Peterson made sure to surround himself with brilliant football minds. And then those guys leave, and suddenly that emphasis is gone. I don't know if it's hubris because of the Super Bowl, but that emphasis is gone. There is no more, let's challenge ourselves. Let's make sure. Why isn't Jay Gruden on the phone with the Philadelphia Eagles right now? Why aren't they at least trying to call to see if he's interested in coming in to help this team? Why is this allowed to continue? Positional groups where there has been no growth over 2 years. And guys keep falling upwards. Deuce Staley. Oh, Deuce Staley is going to be the next offensive coordinator. I'm thrilled for that. He has one job, and he's the running backs coach, and he can't get the running back rotations right. Jordan Howard is clearly the most consistent running back on this team, and he gets fewer carries than Miles Sanders, who averages, last time I looked at it, it was like 2.2 yards per carry. It's mind-boggling, and no one seems to care. And that's what frustrates me, that no one seems to care within the organization, and no one is doing anything to try and change it.
I mean, I'm not gonna try to make you feel a lot better. I mean, I think that there's
thanks.
I don't know what to say. Like they're underachieving right now. They're a team that I thought, and still think have absolute Super Bowl aspirations. They're 3-4. It's not like it's not a Falcons situation yet or anything like that. I don't know that heads need to roll, but definitely change needs to be made. I think that the one thing I will say to hopefully make you feel better is using Dallas Goedert more, I think, is a sign of trying to get a little bit more creative with the offense and the way that the personnel they currently have. Jordan Howard gets 11 carries last week. You're right. That's probably not enough for how good he's playing. And I mean, I'm not the biggest Jordan Howard guy, but he's been impressive behind this offensive line. So there's probably something there. I think that right now it's one of those things where like things are spinning negatively out of control, but they have the infrastructure in place, the one that's, led them to so many wins, even with backup quarterback play, that, you sort of have to trust Doug Peterson, in my mind, to steady the ship and see what happens and give it, a fair sample. I think the one thing I will say is if they don't add someone in the secondary like soon, I mean, that is a huge knock against Howie Roseman and these guys, because anyone with two eyes can tell that this secondary is, forget about a championship defense. I mean, it might be a bottom 5 secondary, if not bottom 3 in the league. So there's a lot of work to be done on that back end. And I think that not addressing that is an insult to Peterson and to the rest of the team because of, what they have currently out there. It's just not going to cut it.
Well, I think it's an insult to the fans that this organization is not showing that they give a damn, and that we're not seeing any accountability. That's what I think is insulting.
Yeah, I think that
I'm furious. I'm
furious. I can tell the accountability thing is fair. I don't think saying they don't care is fair, because they want to win. They obviously, Howie Roseman has been one of the most
Then do
decisive,
something
aggressive. I
different.
mean, they offered for Jalen Ramsey a first round. Like when you're offering first round players, I think that's proof that they know there's something up. But my problem is if you're willing to go 92% of the way, just go that last 8% and get the job done and make your team better. Because it is a binary thing. Either you acquire the player or you don't. And I think that it's sort of arbitrary to say, oh, we're not giving up that last little bit to make that happen.
And this all ties into the conversation we had earlier about overvaluing prospects, and we frequently talk about the overvaluing of draft picks in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
This is so when you look at this
in every league, by the way.
It's true, absolutely. When you look at this tangibly, like you're talking about, would you trade for Philadelphia? It would be Derek Barnett and Nelson Aguilar for Jalen Ramsey. And no,
Yeah.
they're not willing to give up the next Derek Barnett and the next Nelson Aguilar for a top, the top cornerback in football, one of the top defensive players in football. I understand that there's salary cap issues that go along with it, but just, do what the Rams, figure it out. Get the guy into the locker room and let's go. Let's
Totally.
do something, for the love of God, do something. And
Well,
and you talk about wait, I'm not done. You
No.
talk about
Please go.
I want to refute one of the positives that you mentioned earlier, and that was the introduction of Dallas Goedert as a bigger threat within the offense. And my issue with that is that's wonderful, but they're doing that at the expense of Zach Ertz. They haven't figured out how to use them both. It's A or B. And A just happens to be Goddard over the last couple of weeks. Ertz caught his first pass in the third quarter of that Cowboys game.
That's interesting. I don't disagree with that. That's a problem. Yeah, like I think that just using the two of them makes them a little bit creative, and just in terms of like him Goddard getting on the field because Ertz is going to play 100% of the snaps essentially every week anyway. So I mean, I think that just getting Goddard on the field in favor of guys like Aguilar, like, I mean, Mac Hollins, essentially, right? Like, I mean, I think that that's a good thing for them. And it's creative, but it worked in that Packers game and it hasn't worked otherwise as far as getting both those guys going. So, long way to go. But yeah, 3-4 is not where you want to be right now.
Oh, we can't take Mac Hollins off the field, aren't you? I don't know if you've seen the analytics for that, but something like 0.08% of the time he's on the field, he catches a ball. So you can't get rid of that production.
Yeah, no, I know. It's always funny when you see stuff like that and you're like, what are they seeing? Because I think we're watching the same game, but, same thing with again, the Patriots trading a second rounder for Mohamed Sanu. Like, I respect the Patriots. I think that they obviously know what they're doing. I think that Mohamed Sanu is a very good player. He's 30 with 2 years this year and then one more year left on his deal. How is that worth a second rounder? I mean, he is the definition of a number 3 receiver in the league. So I mean, I'd say that because I think Hollins and there are many other players like that. Teams, like you said, to bring this totally full circle, teams overvalue their own guys so much and their own ability to identify good players so much that they're willing to miss out on the unknown or the known quantities on other teams sometimes, which is, I think, a huge failure.
Yeah, and can I tell you with the Mohamed Sanu thing in New England now has two of the best throwers of the football at the wide receiver position. We're going to see some crazy kind of like double lateral wide receiver pass or something just absolutely bananas. And I bet you they do it in the next couple of weeks just so it's on tape and teams have to look for it.
I was waiting for it yesterday in that blowout against the Jets. I thought that maybe not that play, but like they use a linebacker at fullback. That now there's going to be an example where they use him at fullback at the end of the game and they actually throw to him or something, like they're just throwing stuff out there to toy with the rest of the NFL, and kudos to them. I mean, they're always ahead of the game.
I mean, Belichick was furious. He took 2 penalties to get his kicker in a better position, or his punter in a better position.
Clock. He burned like a minute and a half off the clock. Yeah, that was hilarious. I mean, he was laughing, but that was amazing.
Oh, he's better than Doug Peterson. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.